Christophe Salmon is Chief Financial Officer for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Trafigura. He joins us today to discuss trade finance and infrastructure investment. Christophe, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nicolette.
Christophe, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of concern over the ability of banks to finance trade. What is the situation today?
Trade financing is the sweet spot for the banks today. Banks are trying to reduce the mismatch from their short-term resources, the deposits, and their long-term uses, the loans. And trade finance assets are, by definition, short-term. So it fits particularly well the asset and liability management of the banks. Having said that, banks tend to be more and more selective in terms of who they are dealing with, who they are financing. The credit risk, compliance risk, long-term relationship is their motto today. Trafigura is evolving particularly well in this new financing environment. Recently, we've been able to substantially increase our working capital lines, as well as increase the number of banks that are financing us, especially with the regional banks that are financing our working capital flows wherever we operate in the world. We need to continue to expand our working capital financing to tally the growth of our trading business while maintaining a sufficient headroom under our bank authorization for safety purposes.
Now, on the other hand, your infrastructure investments have increased substantially, particularly over the last 2 years. How are these financed?
As a background, it is true that Trafigura has substantially increased its portfolio of fixed assets. These fixed assets are logistical assets, warehousing, tank farms, and to a lesser extent, producing assets, mining companies. These assets are very, very complementary to the trading business. As far as financing is concerned, obviously, we need to match the maturity of these fixed assets by extending the tenor of our facilities. Traditionally, we've been financed by banks, but we believe that going forward, banks will have less and less appetite to finance, to extend long-term financing for liquidity management and regulatory reasons. So Trafigura has started and will continue to be more active in the capital market fundraising. This has been the case in April this year, where we issued a $500 million perpetual bond facility. Recently, in June, we've issued a $200 million bond linked to the financing of our coal terminal project in Louisiana over a tenor or over a maturity of 23 years. And last but not least, recently, we've been able to place a $200 million bond with a European insurance company over a 7-year tenor.
Okay, but you get finance, but you also finance producers and distributors in certain conditions. Can you explain us the rationale behind this and how does it work?
Big picture, the supplier credit and the customer financing has always played a big role in the financing of the overall economy. And the commodity trading industry is not an exception to this. It's one of the added value of the large trading companies to give this type of service. This is not an autonomous source of profit. This is very much linked to the increase of the trading flows. And this activity of prepaying the suppliers, prepaying the producers, is very complementary to the bank direct lending activity. I can take a few examples. For instance, in Mongolia, international banks will never accept to lend directly to producers, where they are very happy to prepay, to financing prepayments of traders that monetize the future export flows. On the other hand, companies like Rosneft, which is the largest oil producer in the world, see a lot of value in diversifying their source of financing by having recourse to prepayment facilities.
So this is the same as happens in other industries such as distribution or automotive industry?
Absolutely. And for us, it's going to increase as our market share expands in the global markets.
And it's always against contracts. You never do this in isolation.
Absolutely. Each time we grant our balance sheet to suppliers, we want to have an offtake contract to be able to justify it.
Christophe, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Nicolette.